Politicians, the elite, and newspapers. They all told us what to think, and a lot of people believed them. For decades, the deception went on. But as the years go by, the truth is revealed. This is Centralia's hidden history and the murder of Wesley Everest. Good day, gentlemen. I am attorney Elmer Smith. I have heard the rumors about the upcoming planned attack. Tell me what you know and what I can do to help. Thank you, Elmer, for being here. This is what I heard so far. During the Armistice parade, the Centralia American Legion are planning on attacking our hall. They're going to destroy our building, burn our belongings, and then assault us. We have had enough of the brutal beatings and destruction. What can we do to stop this? Have you asked for police protection to prevent the attack on the hall? Yes, we did. We went to the police with information about the planned attack and asked for the police to protect us, but the police chief declined. So what we need to know from you is whether we have the legal right to defend our hall with weapons. Yes, you do have a legal right to defend yourself if you feel that your life or your property is threatened. I fought for democracy in France, and I'm going to fight for it here. Elmer, let me introduce you to Wesley Everest. He is a veteran as well as being a member of the IWW. He is a good man and believes strongly in democracy. It's very nice to meet you, Wesley. Well, gentlemen, I must go now. I have a lot of work to do on your behalf. Good luck and stay safe. There was very good reason to be concerned about this attack. You have to understand that 1 year earlier, the IWW, short for the Industrial Workers of the World, their hall was targeted and destroyed, their items burned. They had armed trucks parked nearby, and the union members were loaded into them like animals. The employers and their vigilantes drove them out of town. Then they beat them with brass pipes, clubs, rubber hoses. If they didn't have a weapon, they kicked and punched them, told them to leave town and not to come back. This brutal attack was done by the lumber barons, their vigilantes, political officials, and other employers of the town. And just what kind of people belonged to the IWW? Well, they were the miners, the mill workers, the lumberjacks, railroad workers, and more. They were the unskilled workers, non-whites, immigrants, and women. They worked long hours, 6 days a week, for very low wages, and the working conditions were very dangerous. They were workers who fought for higher wages and improved working conditions. These workers didn't have wealth or influence. In fact, there were times they could barely afford food. They only had their hard work and growing sense of solidarity. They fought by banding together and forming one big union. At first, they were ignored by the Labor Federation until they went on strike and formed picket lines. These picketers were confronted by the police, vigilantes, strikebreakers, all led by the lumber barons, whom had a monopoly on the forest and its wealth, and they didn't want to share it. They were only afraid of one thing, and that was the solidarity of their employees. And so they fought back. Their main targets? The organizers of the labor unions. And Wesley Everest was one of those organizers. The morning of November 11th, 1919, the Armistice Parade was getting ready to start. Wesley Everest and the other IWW members were getting ready to defend their hall. Besides the men inside the hall, there were armed men in 3 other buildings close to them. Meanwhile, the Centralia American Legion members had planned their attack, and they were armed with guns, gas pipes, rubber hoses, axes. Some had them hidden under their uniforms. Others didn't bother to hide them at all. You could feel the tension in the air as the Legion parked 2 armed trucks near the Roderick Hotel. This was done to load the IWW members in after their attack and take them out of town. But this would be the first time that the IWW members will be waiting to defend themselves and their building with weapons. Before I continue, I would like to ask everybody to please leave a comment. You see, I work very hard on these videos, and I have some viewers that love to give negative responses. Constructive criticism is fine. It gives me something to work on, but I really need some positive responses too. So please tell me what you like about the video. I would really appreciate it. Now back to the story. The parade started in Centralia with the American Legion members marching down 3rd Street. They marched past the Roderick Hotel. They went to the end of the block, broke ranks, and came back. The lieutenant gave the order, "Bunch up, men," as they halted in front of the Roderick Hotel. They turned and faced the Roderick Hotel, just waiting for an order to charge. When the whistle blew, they ran towards the building, smashed the doors and the windows, and the first man that stepped inside the hall was shot down. But they kept coming. Soon, the Roderick Hotel was overrun by the Legionnaires, all whom had guns and weapons themselves. Being overpowered, most of the Union men ran to the back side of the building. All but Wesley, who was a veteran himself. He escaped out of the back of the building while being chased by Legionnaires, shooting at him, and him shooting back in self-defense. He ran down to the Skookumchuck River. He started to cross it, but the current was too swift, so he had to come back. Dale Hubbard, one of the Legionnaires, had caught up to Wesley at this time. He pointed his revolver at him, started to shoot, but the gun misfired. In self-defense, Wesley shot back at Hubbard. He hit and fatally wounded him. By this time, the rest had arrived. They overpowered Wesley, beat him, tied him to the back of a car, and dragged him back to town. They reached the town. An angry crowd started to gather around Wesley. They started punching and kicking him. Some even wanted to hang him. But then they decided against it because there were too many witnesses. So they dragged him into jail, where his other allies sat imprisoned, and they threw him in, where he laid on the floor in a pool of his own blood. Later on that evening, Dale Hubbard's uncle, F. Hubbard, who was president of the Southwest Washington Lumbers Association, called a meeting with the other elites of the town and all those he trusted to follow through with the lynching of Wesley Everest. A couple of hours later, the city lights in Centralia conveniently went out, At the same time, a group of cars lined up and parked in front of the city jail. A few of the men went into the jail with no opposition from the police. They dragged Wesley out and threw him in their car. Wesley was then driven down to the Millen Street Bridge over the Chehalis River, where he was dragged out of the car with a rope already knotted around his neck, where they threw him over the Millen Street Bridge in an attempt to lynch him. The rope wasn't knotted properly. Wesley was still alive, so the lynchers pulled him back up. They put a longer rope around his neck and threw him over again. But he didn't die. So these monsters brought him back up one more time. They adjusted the ropes, and over he went again. Then Wesley Everest was dead. The group had their car lights on to light up Wesley's swaying corpse. At this time, the group entertained themselves by taking turns shooting at Wesley's dead body. The next morning, Wesley's mangled body was taken back to the prison and thrown on the jail floor for all his fellow workers to view. Wesley's dead body laid on that jail room floor for 2 days. His grave was dug by his fellow allies in prison in a pauper cemetery in the far southeastern side of town. This was the unknown soldier's grave, and there wasn't a headstone placed there until the 1930s, when his fellow allies in prison were released. No one was ever arrested for Wesley's murder. Did any of these leading newspapers denounce these acts as unlawful, cruel, undemocratic? No. On the contrary, most of them indirectly praised the proprietors of these crimes for their patriotic services. The newspapers will be full of stupid, if not malicious, comments on their trial. In 1924, the Sentinel statue was built. It was put in the center of town at George Washington Park in Centralia. It was dedicated by the Centralia Legionnaires for the Legionnaires that died during the attack of the IWW members. It says that they were slain on the streets of Centralia, Washington on Armistice Day, November 11th, 1919, while on a peaceful parade wearing their uniforms. On the sides of the statue is a tribute to the 4 dead Legionnaires. It does not mention anything about the IWW. In 1997, a mural was created on the side of the former Elks Lodge in Centralia, just across from the Sentinel statue. They named the mural The Resurrection of Wesley Everest. It features Wesley painted half in loggers' clothes and half in military clothes to show that he was both. This also was to tell the IWW's version of the story. It took the town 100 years before there was a plaque and a mural dedicated to the IWW and their version of the story. Union victims of the Centralia tragedy of 1919. Eugene Barrett, imprisoned 11 years. Ray Becker, imprisoned 19 years. Bert Bland, imprisoned 13 years. O.C. Bland, imprisoned 12 years. Wesley Everest, lynched. John Lamb, imprisoned 13 years. James Milnerny, died in prison. Lauren Roberts, imprisoned 10 years. Britt Smith, imprisoned 13 years. Elmer Smith, disbarred for defending their Union Hall.